can't get a word in edgewise around here. Nice.
Jim Gundel, where are you?
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the February 26th meeting of the Rotary Club of Beaver Creek. I'm your host and current president, Mike Canada. I'm glad to see all of your faces today. I would like to thank our greeters. We had several. Mike Zwick for our great speakers and programs, Jim Gundel and Alex Zaharia for website and YouTube help, and of course, Beth Cusack for our book dedication. I'd like to welcome all of our members who have joined us today, especially if you haven't been here for a while. We're happy you're here. Any guests that may be joining, and if you are a guest, would you please introduce yourself? Not all at once, though. We got to pace ourselves.
It's just me again, another guest, Amanda Hay.
Amanda, we're glad to have you back.
Andrew Hunt.
Andrew, glad to have you back.
Yes, I'm a guest. I'm Aimee.
Aimee, glad to have you.
Is Rick Prowlis a guest?
I'll let Rick respond to that.
Yeah, that's real funny. Don't quit your day job, dude.
And as always, a special welcome to our speaker, Aimee Booker. She will be talking to us today about employee happiness. Aimee, thank you so much for taking some time for our club. So far, our club's been averaging 37 on Zoom and 13 and a half on YouTube. And with that, I will turn it over to our Sergeant at Arms, Mr. Dave Fleming.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. I have two halves of me are present today. It's the 26th of February. It's 81 degrees in Siesta Key, clear sky. Gulf winds 7 knots in case you were planning on boating out in the Gulf today. World news, national news, United States launched airstrikes against Syria near the Iraqi border. 2 individuals from Champaign County, 2 individuals from Warren County, 5 individuals from Columbus, and 1 from Wilmington have been charged in federal court for participation in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. I am so proud of Ohio. COVID infections are down, and 50 million Americans have now received a vaccination. 14% have received 1 vaccination, and 6.6% of our population has received 2 vaccinations. We all know Michigan State beat 4th-ranked OSU last night by a score of 71-67. Tiger Woods has been transferred to a new hospital for continued recovery from his injuries as a result of a serious car crash rollover. Tampa Bucks Tom Brady may extend his 2-year, $50 million contract. Even if he doesn't get the full $50 million, he's thinking about extending his contract. Olympics team coach John Geddert died by suicide hours after being charged with human trafficking and sexual assault. I need to go to things that are happening otherwise. It was a good week for bitches, that is female dogs, after Lulu, a border collie from Nashville, was left $5 million by her wealthy owner, Bill Doris. Lulu will be cared for by Doris's friend, Martha Burton, 88, who said that while it will be hard to spend that much money on the dog, I'd sure like to try. It's a good week for Elias Quezada, a 7-year-old Florida boy who hid in a garbage bin that was then dumped into a garbage truck. Sanitation worker Waldo Fedele spotted Quezada on a surveillance camera, turned off the truck's compaction blades just in time. I was going to be a mashed potato, a grinning Quezada noted afterwards. It was a bad week for stopping the steal after sharp-eyed TV viewers spotted Michael Van de Veen, a personal injury lawyer who defended former President Donald Trump in his impeachment trial, was pocketing 3 U.S. Senate drink coasters at the conclusion of proceeding. That's just like an attorney to try to make off with anything he can get his hand. Let's see.
I thought you were in the forgiveness business, Dave.
What? What? Did I hear a peep over there? Some kind of peep. You don't have any U.S. Senate coasters, do you, Dave Cusack?
Aren't you in the forgiveness business, Dave?
Oh, the forgiveness. Oh, is that what you said? The forgive. Well, I'm just reporting the news. I'm sure I would have forgiven him. I would have quickly forgiven him. I already have. Who the heck is Michael Van de Veen? Anyway, fresh starts. A Spokane, Washington police charged Marcus Goodman, 31 years old, with carjacking 20 minutes after he was released from jail. And he was promptly returned to jail. Let's see what else we got. Only in America, Postmaster General Louis DeJoy is planning to end air transport of first-class mail, meaning you can no longer expect your first-class mail to arrive within 1 to 3 days. The 10-year plan would lump all first-class mail into a delivery window of 3 to 5 business days and include a major yet-to-be-announced hike in postage fees. What else in America? Nothing else. Oh, yeah. A Michigan ammunition supplier is requiring all customers to affirm that they didn't vote for Joe Biden. Owners of Finex Ammunition explained that Biden ran on a radical gun control platform, which include banning the online sale of ammunition. A vote for Biden, they said, was a vote to bankrupt our company, and we don't want your money. Let's see, what else? I read about it someplace. Oh, yeah, a Texas prosecutor surprised the judge at a pre-trial Zoom hearing, by appearing as a cat face. Rod Ponton didn't realize he had the cat filter on the computer, and his usually sober face, because of course he's an attorney, being a prosecuting attorney, his usually sober face was replaced with that of a blue-eyed kitten. When the judge pointed it out, Ponton said, "I didn't know how to remove it." He tried to press on. This is that classic mistake of you dig a hole and then you just keep digging it in deeper. He tried to press on, telling the judge and the other lawyers, "I'm prepared to go forward with it." He eventually removed the filter, saying, "I am not a cat." And a toilet seat that once belonged to Adolf Hitler has sold for $18,750 at auction. The white wooden seat was taken from Hitler's Bavarian retreat, the Ruhrhof, by a soldier, Ragnvald Borch, at the end of the Second World War. The seat remained on display in the soldier's basement for decades until his son decided to auction it. Bill Panagopoulos of Alexander Historical Auctions said the toilet was as close to a throne as the dictator would ever get, adding, "One can scarcely imagine the plotting the tyrant undertook while contemplating the world from atop this perch." And that's enough of that. Let's see if we got any interesting stories. Well, here's some golfer stuff. Sam Snead reportedly quoted as saying, "These greens are so fast, I have to hold my putter over the ball and hit it with the shadow." George Brett said, and I quote, "I was 3 over. 1 over a house, 1 over a patio, and 1 over a swimming pool." Jim Murray said, "Actually, the only time I ever took out a 1-iron was to kill a tarantula. And I took a 7 to do that." Mickey Mantle said, give it Mickey Mantle. I guess he also played golf. "The only sure rule in golf is he who has the fastest cart never has to play the bad lie." Kevin Costner, great authority on golf, said, "Sex and golf are the 2 things you can enjoy even if you're not good at them." Gigi Rodriguez reportedly said, "After all these years, it's still embarrassing for me to play on the American Golf Tour. Like the time I asked my caddy for a sand wedge And he came back 10 minutes later with a ham on rye. It would, like a sandwich. He meant sand wedge and got a sandwich. Brian Weiss says, the ball retriever is not long enough to get my putter out of the tree. Dan Marino says, swing hard in case you hit it. Jack Binney, Jack Binney, another great golfer, said, give me golf clubs, fresh air, and a beautiful partner, and you can keep the clubs in the fresh air. So then we have this little thing called How Many Cows? A cowboy named Bud was overseeing his herd in a remote mountainous pasture in Montana when suddenly a brand new BMW advanced toward him out of a cloud of dust. The driver, a young man named Cliff, in a Brioni suit, Gucci shoes, Ray-Ban sunglasses, and a YSL tie, leaned out the window and asked the cowboy, if I tell you exactly how many cows and calves you have in your herd, will you give me a calf? Bud looked at the man, who obviously was a yuppie, then looked at his peacefully grazing herd and calmly answered, sure, why not? The yuppie parked his car, whipped out his Dell notebook computer, connected it to his Apple iPhone, surfed to a NASA page on the internet, called up a GPS satellite to get an exact fix on his location, then fed it to another NASA satellite that scanned the area in ultra-high resolution photography. The man then opened the digital photo in Adobe Photoshop, exported it to an image processing facility in Hamburg, Germany. Within seconds, he received an email on his Apple iPad that the image had been processed and the data stored. He then accessed an MS SQL database through an ODBC connected Excel spreadsheet with email on his Galaxy S5, and after a few minutes received a response. He printed out a full color 150-page report on his high-tech miniaturized HP LaserJet printer, turned to the cowboy and said, you have exactly 1,586 cows and calves. That's right. Well, I guess you can take one of my calves, said Cowboy Bud. He watched the young man select one of the animals, looked with amusement as the young man stuffed it in the trunk of his car. Then Bud said to the young man, hey, if I can tell you exactly what your business is, will you give me back my calf? The young man thought about it for a second and then said, okay, why not? Bud said, you're a legislator in the Ohio State. No. You're a congressman for the United States government, said Bud. Wow, that's correct, said the guy. But how did you guess that? No guessing required, answered the cowboy. You showed up here even though nobody called you. You wanted to get paid for an answer I already knew to a question I never asked. You used millions of dollars worth of equipment trying to show me how much smarter than me you are, and you don't know anything about how working people make a living or about cows for that matter. This happens to be a herd of sheep. Now, give me back my dog. And that would be the story about the cowboy and the congressman. We do have some, I can't get back to my screen. Anyway, we do have some birthdays. Max McConnell had a birthday on 24th. Bob Wilden had a birthday on 25th. And Leila Marcus has her birthday on the 1st of March, Eric, so be thinking ahead. Steve Brown celebrated his 4 years in the club on the 24th, and Dave Dunn celebrated his 12 years in the club, or will celebrate his 12 years in the club on the 27th. Now, I do have some fines, although everybody understands that this is an honor system fining process. But here are the fines. It's $1 if you ever hid in a garbage can. It's $1 if you've ever stolen a drink coaster from the United States Senate. It's $1 if you sell gun ammunition, or if you fail to vote for Governor DeWine's promised gun legislation. It's $1 if you have been to a trial wearing a cat face, and it's $1 if you have ever been to the Burhof in Bavaria. And with that, Mr. President, I will turn the audio back over to you for the collection of happy bucks.
Thank you, Dave Fleming. Before we get to Happy Bucks, I'd like to turn it over to Dave Cusack. If you have any rebuttal remarks you want to, Fleming, go ahead now.
I have none. I am accustomed to this. Only when I was president did I put a little moratorium on it. So
Very good. Very good. Are there any Happy Bucks?
I have two happy bucks. The first is that our orientation task force met last night, and I think we're off to a good start. And the second is that I've noticed that from the beginning of the meeting until now, there's still 36 people left, even after Dave's presentation.
I've got two if no one else is going to go. Just want to double what Eric said last night. The task force was great, but more than anything, I just enjoyed chatting with some of y'all. It was Mike and Alex, Dave, Eric, and oh God, I'm forgetting one, Praytop. So it's just really nice because that has definitely been missing over the past year, that small group kind of breakout. And so that was nice. Second, I want to give a happy buck. I think I've rubbed off on Eric Marcus, who has now picked up birding and messages me every day about how I'm eating through his retirement because he has to keep up with the bird seed, and it's going to dip into his Rotary donations. That's what he's telling me. So happy to see someone else get into birding because it's definitely a very delightful hobby.
I got a happy buck. So last night Rotary had president-elect and assistant governor and governor kind of meet and greet. So a lot of amazing people in Rotary here locally. And I did not know this, but our founder's day is in May, but I did not realize that this club will be celebrating its 48th year. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Great. Are there any other Happy Bucks? All right, we'll move on to announcements. The only announcement I have this week is if you're a guest and you haven't already, please put your contact information in the chat so I can follow up with you. I think most of the guests that are here, I think I have your information, but if you would like to have that included, put that in the chat. Are there any other announcements for the club? All right, hearing none, I will turn the mic over to Mr. Eric Marcus, who will be introducing our speaker and our program for today.
All right. I don't get to introduce very many speakers because I don't really know anybody. But the speaker today is going to talk about something really kind of dear to my heart, which is how to have happy employees. When I ran my business and somebody would walk into my office and say, I really hate my job, I would say to them, your resignation's accepted. I'll give you 2 weeks severance. Find something that you love to do. Our speaker today is Aimee Bucher. She's the CEO and founder of Harrison Latham. Harrison Latham is a group of what she says is world-class coaches and consultants focused on creating happier workplaces. Aimee's an international best-selling author, professional speaker, and an International Coach Federation certified coach. She holds degrees from Miami University and the Ohio State University. She is certified in emotional intelligence, predictive index, performance gap indicator, and energy leadership. I'm not sure what any of those are. I'm sure she'll explain them. She has worked with a wide range of organizations, from single-person startups to established Fortune 500 companies, as well as educational institutions and nonprofits. Aimee is a classically trained pianist, mother of 4 amazing kids, 13 to 22, a professional actress, and the founder of the improv group, #SorryNotSorry. So I'd like to introduce our speaker today, who's going to talk about what actually happens when a company focuses on employee happiness. Thanks for the prompt, Aimee Bucher.
Thanks so much, Eric. And I just have to share, I've been speaking at different Rotary clubs, and I have these little takeaways from each club that sort of helps me remember the personality and flavor of that particular club. And right now, my biggest takeaway from this club is it's been a good week for bitches. So which just will continue to make me laugh every time I think about it. So thank you for that. But let's talk about employee happiness and what actually happens when a company focuses on employee happiness. Like, why does happiness even matter in business? So let's imagine a scenario that we're all familiar with. Picture walking into work on a typical Monday morning. What's the general mood? Likely everybody's tired. Maybe most people relaxed, enjoyed their weekend. They're dreading the work week. There's this kind of a level of stress that everyone's experiencing. Maybe you're walking in knowing how many emails are waiting in your inbox, and you feel like you're already behind and the week hasn't even really started yet. In most organizations, Monday morning is not a happy time. Now, if you'll indulge me, I want to imagine this scenario again, but I want to change a few things. You walk into work on a Monday morning, and every person there, including you, is genuinely happy to be there. Every person is excited about the work they're going to get to do that day. They're looking forward to seeing and interacting with their colleagues. Imagine if Mondays at 8 a.m. had that same happy energy as Fridays at 5 p.m. How would that change the company? How would productivity be different? What would engagement levels be like? What would happen in different departments like sales? So the cool thing is we have data that answers all of these questions. We have data that tells us what's different in a happy company and how happiness affects all the various parts of an organization. When employees are happy, productivity increases. Happy people work harder. When employees are happy, task accuracy increases. Happy people take pride in their work. When employees are happy, profitability increases. Happy people believe in the purpose of the organization and they push it forward. And happy people sell more, a lot more. What could your company do with a 37% increase in sales? Herb Kelleher founded Southwest Airlines in 1967 and was the CEO for over 30 years. His vision for the company was simple. Employees come first because happy employees do better work. Better work makes the customers happy because they get great service, and that makes the stakeholders happy because the customers keep coming back and the company ultimately makes more money. Until the pandemic hobbled the entire travel industry, Southwest was the only major airline in the world to have turned a profit every year since the 70s. And as the entire travel industry continues to struggle with the pandemic, Southwest has continued to fare better than all the other major airlines. And why is that? Their committed focus to their employees, the vision that employee happiness is job number one. Happy employees do better work creates happier customers create more profit for the company, which in turn creates happier stakeholders. The strength of the Southwest Airlines vision is carrying them through this crisis, and they will undoubtedly come out successful on the other side of it. And their customers and the industry continue to recognize just how powerful this focus on employee happiness truly is. What is happiness? How do you define it? For a lot of people, happiness feels like this fluffy concept that's hard to really wrap your head around and define. And if you're feeling that way, you're not alone. I'm currently writing my next book, and I've been interviewing experts from all over the world, and it's fascinating. These are people who spend all of their working hours researching, studying, understanding the science of happiness and how we create more of it in the world. In these interviews, I ask every one of them this same question: how do you define happiness? This group of incredibly intelligent global researchers do not agree on the definition of happiness. They each give a different answer to that seemingly simple question. So if you feel like you don't quite understand how to define happiness, you're in good company. But I do want to share a definition that we can use for our purposes today. Because when I'm talking about happiness, I'm not talking about that fleeting type of happiness that we all experience, that feeling that you get when something good happens to you. For example, you play with a puppy and you feel happy, or you have a meal at your favorite restaurant and you feel happy. Those moments of externally produced happiness are absolutely important for our well-being, and I'm not dismissing their value. But for today, we're talking about the type of happiness that you create within yourself and then within your organization. Dr. Sonia Lyubomirsky is a professor at the University of California. She spent almost all of her career studying happiness and is considered one of the world's leading experts in happiness research. We're going to start with her personal definition of happiness, and I'd like to read it to you. Happiness is defined as the experience of joy, contentment, or positive well-being, combined with a sense that one's life is good, meaningful, and worthwhile. This is a great definition for personal happiness, but what does it mean in an organizational setting? How can we apply this definition systemically? So we can use Dr. Leo Bromersky's personal definition of happiness to create a systemic organizational definition of happiness this way. Happiness in its most basic form feels good. It's pleasurable. We like it. We enjoy it. A strong signal that an organization is happy is you can observe it. You can easily see that people are happy. They enjoy their work. They feel good about their work. We're all driven by some purpose. Every person wants to feel as though they are part of something bigger and more important than just their daily tasks of life. Organizations are happy when employees not only understand the bigger purpose, but they also truly believe in it. So our definition of organizational happiness is a happy organization is one where people feel good about themselves and their work, and all employees believe their work has purpose and meaning beyond the bottom line. Okay, great. How in the world do we achieve organizational happiness? Like, how do we create systemic happiness in our companies? You might be asking, where would I even start? There are 3 things you can do immediately to start leading your organization in a happier direction. We're going to use the acronym MAT, M-A-T, to identify the 3 things. So think of it like a welcome mat. Welcome to a happier organization. The M stands for measure the data. You measure everything in your company because it's important to know what's working and what's not. Happiness is no different. This step though of measuring happiness typically trips up even the most seasoned leaders. It's a huge block for a lot of organizations because how do you measure happiness? Like, what's that even look like? Now, maybe you do an annual engagement survey, or maybe you have a smaller team and you just go with your gut feeling about how everyone's doing and feeling. The problem with annual surveys is they're once a year, and as we've seen over the last 12 months, a lot can change in 1 year. And your gut feeling, your intuition, it's really important. It's super valuable, but actual data is going to give you a complete unbiased picture. So you need access to that objective data that shows how your people are doing. You need to be able to quickly and clearly see the emotional health and happiness of your people. You need data that can be segmented so you can track patterns in teams or locations or across departments. Unfortunately, we have the technology to do this. 2 of my favorite tools out there are Friday Pulse and Heart Count. They're not identical tools, but they do have key similarities. So both are based on the foundational idea of a simple, weekly, automated check-in with all of your employees. And both provide dashboards so you can see at a glance how every person, team, department, the entire organization is doing. The actual tracking of the data, the measuring of the data, it's not that hard. We have tools to make it pretty simple. I spoke with Nick Marks at Friday Pulse not too long ago, and they just started offering this personal version called Friday One. You can use it for free. So if you're curious about the actual items that are measured in a happiness assessment, I encourage you to check this out. There are 5 key areas and the concepts, and it's all the same as the actual full Friday Pulse tool. So you can go to fridaypulse.com/the-happiness-test, and it's all free to sign up, and they'll send you an email and the whole bit. And then they won't hassle you about signing up for any other products. So that's kind of a nice thing. So when we measure the data, though, here's a caveat. So don't measure the data. Don't track the happiness of your employees unless you're going to do something with that data. If you're not going to take action on it, don't measure anything. We've all done the engagement surveys that are reported in the big meeting to upper management, and then they get shoved in a filing cabinet somewhere and are never seen again, right? And how do employees feel about that? Not great. Same thing with happiness data. Getting input from your employees and then ignoring that input will create unhappiness. And that's the opposite direction of where we're trying to go. So once you have the data, you need to take action on it. And like the measurement, taking action doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be a new fancy program or some involved system for improving things. At the very baseline foundational level, you can simply use the results as conversation starters. So during a weekly huddle, a manager might say something to the team like, hey, our happiness level took a dip last week. Let's talk about why that is and see what we can address. Maybe team members had unclear instructions on a new project, and they were frustrated, or maybe there was an unhappy customer who just made everybody's lives miserable. There are often things that you can address to increase your team's overall happiness.
You okay?
There might not be things that you can address. If someone has a crisis happening at home, a death from COVID, maybe their spouse lost their job, there are a lot of factors, especially right now, that affect us emotionally And that stuff all shows up at work. But simply communicating, asking the questions, it opens the door for your people to know they're being heard, to know that the organization values them, which in turn helps them to be their best selves at work, which ultimately makes them happier. So measure the data, get continual objective information on how happy your people are, and then make sure you're taking ongoing action on those results. Time abundance is the new rich. Feeling like we have free time or even just enough time to get everything done is one of the keys to creating happiness. Now, sometimes a team or an entire organization can be under a tight deadline, or like our healthcare systems have recently experienced, just in crisis, and having an abundance of time simply isn't possible. But if that's the regular expectation, if your employees are constantly working against the clock, you're going to have unhappy, burned out employees, probably a high turnover rate, and it's going to cost the organization a lot of money in the end. The fact of the matter is also, we're just not our best selves when we're time stressed. There's a famous study by Darley and Batson, completed in 1973, but still relevant today. In this study, Princeton Theological Seminary students were presented with a staged Good Samaritan scenario. Now, the Good Samaritan is the story of a man who was attacked and then left for dead on the side of the road. And in the story, people who thought they were too important or too busy passed by the man, and they didn't stop to help. The guy who finally stopped to help was from Samaria. He's the Good Samaritan, thus the name for the story. Now, this is a story any seminary student would be very familiar with. In the study, each student was told they needed to give a talk about the Good Samaritan story, and they were told they were late and they had to hurry to get to the place where they would be speaking, or they had plenty of time to get there. On their way, the students encountered this staged scenario with a man slumped in a doorway that they had to walk through. The man is coughing, he's moaning, he's in obvious distress. It's very clear he needs medical attention and help. So the researchers wanted to know, did the students stop to help? Did they take the role of the Good Samaritan, the story they're thinking about, the story they're about to go speak about? The researchers found in the group of students told they had to hurry to get there, only 10% stopped to help. And some of the students, they just literally stepped over the guy on their way to the building where they were going to speak. In the follow-up with the students, the researchers found that the 90% who didn't stop, they felt terrible about not stopping to help. It wasn't that they didn't notice the man. It wasn't that they didn't care. It wasn't that they didn't feel this pull to stop and help this man in distress. They felt like they didn't have the time. When we feel like we don't have enough time, we are much less likely to act in accordance with our values. Your employees want to do their best work. They care about their work, but when they feel time stressed, they're not going to be their best selves. They're just going to get the job done, but not to the best of their abilities. Remember the stat earlier about the accuracy of tasks? Happy employees are 19% more accurate at their tasks. Allowing time, giving people an abundance of time, helps them do their best work and to bring their prime skills and values to their work. When you allow time, it creates space for your people to be happier. How is company culture communicated? It's through the stories that get told. And here's the thing, stories are being told. Your organization's culture is being shaped every single day. Possibly even right now in this moment, some story is being shared somewhere. And if you are not actively telling the right stories, you're missing a huge opportunity to move the company to a happier place. As humans, we are naturally biased toward the negative. It's a survival mechanism built into our lizard brain. We share negative news and stories much more easily than we share positive news and stories. It's just how we're wired. As a leader, you have to intentionally tell those stories that shape the narrative you want for the organization. Stories that showcase your culture and beliefs in action. The stories that push the company in the direction of happiness. And you have plenty of these stories, but most of them will not circulate without intention. The bad stories are going to spread themselves everywhere, but the good stories are going to stay in the background if they're not actively, intentionally told and shared. You want to tell the stories that show how your company demonstrates its values. You want to tell the stories that praise your employees. You want to tell stories that reinforce your vision, because aligning with the vision is part of increasing systemic happiness. Alex Karuf is the founder and former CEO of Woohoo Inc. It's the Danish company that created Heart Count, one of the measurement tools we talked about earlier. He shared this story with me in a recent interview. A friend of his is the HR manager of another company in Denmark, and one of their company values is respect. An employee, not of Danish origin, had been with a client and was treated badly. The client was just openly racist toward this employee. So when the employee got back to the office, he went to Alex's friend, the HR manager, told him what had happened. The HR manager takes it to the CEO. And the CEO, what does he do? He calls the client and he fires them, terminates the contract on the spot. He says, "This is not how we treat people. We treat people with respect, and we expect the same from our clients. Your contract with us is canceled." Click. Instead of the organization just having a sign on the wall, "Respect is one of our core values," and expecting people to know it and believe it, the value was actively engaged, and they told that story throughout the company. They aligned their company value with a story of actually implementing that value. Can you imagine being an employee at that company and hearing that story as it circulated? Those employees have a new example, a narrative that provides concrete evidence of how the company respects and values them. They can now reference that story as an example of how the organization truly aligns with their values and puts employees first. Zappos is a fascinating company from several aspects. They define their culture in 10 core values that are atypical from other companies' core values, and that they are action statements, not just words. And they take these values so seriously. They celebrate their values. Every hire is based on how well the prospect displays and lives these 10 values. The first value, deliver wow through service, is apparent in every single thing they do. So if you don't know, Zappos is an online shoe retailer, but they will tell you they are a customer service company. Their focus is on providing the very best customer service possible. Oh, and they just happen to sell shoes. So if you get hired at Zappos, no matter what role you're hired into, you start by answering phones in the call center. They believe every employee needs to be intimately familiar with the customer process. And during their busy seasons, every person at the company, from the CEO on down, signs up for shifts to answer the phones. They believe how they serve their customers is the most important thing they do. And they are serious about delivering wow. So traditional call centers use a metric called average handle time as a way to measure efficiency. An industry standard average handle time is 6 minutes and 10 seconds. But efficient handle time and wow don't necessarily go hand in hand. Zappos doesn't just encourage longer customer service calls, they celebrate their longest calls. In 2011, their longest call was 8 hours and 47 minutes. The whole company celebrated when they broke that record the next year with a call that was 10 hours and 29 minutes. And in 2016, the record was broken again with a call that lasted almost 11 hours. That 2016 call started when a college student from somewhere here in the Midwest called to buy a pair of boots. She and the sales rep got the order squared away, and they were chatting. So Stephen Weinstein, the Zappos customer service rep, said, "It was excellent. The connection was amazing. And even though I had never spoken to this customer before in my life, I felt like I had known her for 15 or 20 years. It was just natural, and time was flowing. It felt effortless." They talked about all sorts of things through the almost 11 hours they were on the phone together. Favorite movies, life, food. The college student was considering moving to Vegas, so they talked about what it was like to live there. The actual purchase of the boots was a very tiny part of that phone call. A company spokesperson said, "Sometimes people just need to call and talk. We don't judge. We just want to help." Every employee at Zappos knows the stories of these 10-hour phone calls. Whenever the record is broken, the whole company celebrates. They know they are delivering the wow that they talk about in their first core value. They are fully aligned with that value, and they tell those stories all the time. Telling the stories is a way an organization creates happiness and builds a place where people want to stay and work hard because the employees are hearing the stories of their purpose and their value. Southwest Airlines has imbued every part of their company culture with an intentional focus on happiness. Happiness of their employees, their customers, and their stakeholders. And beyond the impact on the bottom line, there are thousands of stories demonstrating the power of this focus on employee happiness. One of my favorites of these stories is from 2011. A grandmother called Southwest Airlines to arrange a flight for her husband that day. She explained what was going on to the ticketing agent, and the agent struggled with tears throughout the whole transaction. You see, the grandfather is traveling from LA to Denver for the most tragic reason you can imagine. His 3-year-old grandson had been murdered. The woman explained she was the step-grandma, so it was so much more important that the grandfather get there in time to be with his daughter that night when her child, his grandchild, was taken off life support at 9 p.m. The grandfather gets to LAX as soon as his ticket is arranged, but the lines are endlessly long. He's on the verge of tears and trying to explain the situation and get assistance from TSA so he can get to his plane on time. But it's TSA. Nobody cared. No one was willing to listen to the man's story and get him through the lines faster. Finally, he gets through security. He grabs his shoes and belt out of the bin as soon as it comes down the conveyor belt, and he runs to the gate in his stocking feet. He knew he was too late. He knew he had missed his flight. He knew he was not going to make it in time to be with his daughter that night. But as he approached the gate, he saw a pilot standing there. And upon seeing the grandfather running toward him, the pilot cried out, "Are you Mark? We held the plane for you. We're so sorry about the loss of your grandson." The grandfather's in complete disbelief. "Are you serious? You held the plane for me? I can't thank you enough for this." And the pilot responded, "Listen, they can't go anywhere without me. And when I heard your story, I knew I wasn't going anywhere without you. Now relax, we're going to get you there. And again, I'm so sorry." Plane delays can be incredibly expensive for an airline, right? So how did Southwest respond when they learned what the pilot had done? What did they say when they found out he had intentionally delayed a full flight of people for a single passenger? Their spokeswoman said this: "I think we would all agree that the pilot absolutely made the right decision. I don't think you could ask for a better example of great service for our customers." Perhaps shifting your culture won't have such a dramatic impact as that of a grandfather holding his dying grandson's hand. Do you think Herb Kelleher had any idea back in 1967 that he was paving the way for that grandfather to be there that night with his daughter and grandson? No. Herb Kelleher had the vision that creating a culture focused on employee happiness was good for the company. What we understand now is creating a culture focused on employee happiness is good for humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Aimee. Thank you so much for that presentation. What a great story too. Wow. I'm assuming we can ask questions. Anybody have any questions for Aimee?
I'd like to ask one. How can we use some of the things that you talked about in our Rotary Club to make, kind of Rotary Club's like sort of like a business. If the members aren't happy, then our Rotary Club doesn't grow and we don't do well. So how can we use it for our club to make it a better Rotary Club?
That's a good question. And that's a question also we talked about at the Kettering Club, is ways to incorporate happiness into the club itself. And the first step really is to ask people, how happy are you? What would make this a better experience for you? And to ask in ways that people feel like they can be honest. Sometimes there's a level of trust that doesn't exist. And so you have to maybe get that level before you can get actual good answers. But yeah, just ask people.
Yeah, I just kind of want to make a side comment. So you had mentioned, don't do a survey or the research if you're not going to do anything with it. So I 100% agree. There was a company I worked for that didn't ever do like employee assessments. So I filled out my own assessment, sent one to my boss and said, "Hey, if you don't mind, can you fill this out and let's meet up and go over it?" So I was really excited about it, spent a lot of time on it. And then when I went to meet up with him, he said, "Oh, hey, sorry, I didn't have time to fill this out. Let's just go over what you filled out." And I don't think I've turned red so much in my life. It'd have been better off if he just said no. But I 100% agree.
Yeah, sometimes our leadership deeply disappoints us.
Not at Beaver Creek Rotary though, so.
Speak for yourself, Steven. I just want to say thank you for the topic. It's so topical for me. I work over at the Air Force Marathon. I have 6 people that work for me. And I've been there 3 years, and this is the first time I've been a supervisor. And it is like the hardest thing. It is like so much more difficult than people realize. And I've taken leadership courses, and I think I'm doing everything right. And then I just find out like an employee's still unhappy. Like I had someone who's literally their last day is today, and they were only there 5 months, and they just it didn't work for them. And I take so much responsibility for that. And it's like this ever evolving process. And the big thing I think I've learned recently is I thought I was doing all these things right for them. Like, oh, here's this opportunity for training, and here's this, and oh, I put you in for an award. And I realized like I was kind of like, those were my ideas of caring about them and not what their ideas of caring about them were. And so it almost kind of came back to just yesterday, I finally, after 3 years, I made them just do the love languages test. And I was like, what makes you tick? Because I was doing what I thought made them tick. And like my coworker came to me, my assistant director, and said, Brandon, I don't give a damn about awards. So don't waste an entire day putting me in for an awards package, because I just don't care. Like, and that was really eye-opening for me, was that I thought I was doing great things for my team, but a lot of the things I thought I was doing were things they didn't care about. So like you have to like stop and say, well, what do you care about? And another employee, I thought she had all these aspirational goals, and I asked her the other day what her like career goal was, and she said to be a mother. And it just like, it was crazy to me. I had never even thought that that would be like an answer. I thought like, oh, I want to be the head of this or this, and nope, just want to be a mother. And that's fine. I just never thought to ask. So I appreciate your time today, because I'm definitely struggling with building a happy team right now.
Well, it sounds like you're doing a really great job, though. You've become very aware that, and this is something I think a lot of leaders struggle with, is they think, well, how I perceive things is how the whole team perceives it. And that's never the case, ever. But getting to know each person and understanding what motivates them and what really is most important, because those priorities are going to be different for every person. So that's sounds like you're doing some quality work.
Trying. Thank you.
Aimee, I have a quick question. I know you shared a couple of resources with us, but what's a good practical way to get started on something like this?
The one that I always recommend is if you just want a quick way, like, hang on. Whew. The best quick way to get started is to go to Friday Pulse. It's my favorite tool. Well, the heart count is a really great tool too. I like Friday Pulse a little bit better because it is more actionable, and it's fairly inexpensive. And they've been offering through the pandemic some free versions of it. But go check out the Friday one at the happiness test, and you can see the 5 areas that they measure. So they look at connection, inspiration, empowerment, challenge, like how well your job fits you, and there's a 4th one I'm not going to think of off the top of my empowerment. And those are the 5 keys based on their 25 years of data research. Those are the 5 keys of happiness at work. Those are the 5 elements. So that's the fastest way to get started and to get feedback. But you do have to be careful, because if your organization doesn't have a level of trust between your producers and your managers, then they see that as a threat. So you do want to approach it carefully if you don't already have a fairly open, transparent culture.
So you take them to lunch first. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? All right, Aimee, thank you again for your time. We have a tradition in our club that we would dedicate a book to the library on your behalf, so I'll turn it over to Beth to do that.
Aimee, thank you so much for being with us today. In your honor, we will be donating a book to the Beaver Creek Community Library, and it's called Aimee in the Key of Code. And this is a STEM-focused fiction book for girls that combines both music, computer coding, and poetry to tell the story of Aimee, who is the new girl who's trying to find her place in the world.
Very nice. Thanks.
All right, next week we will have Jackie Mayer speaking with us, who is the ex-director of the Therapeutic Writing Institute, and will be introduced by our very own Don Adams. As a reminder, please keep an eye on upcoming programs at beavercreekrotary.com. Is there anything else for the good of the club? All right, have a great weekend, everyone, and we'll see you right back here next week.